Oh, welcome back, everybody. And we're back to the same old from the mainstream media. And yes, I admit this is from Truth Press, not a liberal leaning organization to the point of MSNBC or CBS or the rest. But remember in 2000, they called Florida a good hour or more before the polls closed in the far west part of the Florida Panhandle, which we do now know caused voters who were on their way to the polls to turn around and go home. When they heard, well, Florida's been called, Al Gore has won, they decided it's been called. Our votes are meaningless. And we then had months of Al Gore suing to be credited with votes that were not legal votes. We then had Nancy Pelosi in 01 object to the Electoral College, again in 05 and again in 17. And it's the same every time. I would say do one thing with regards to all of these polls. Ignore them and vote as if your life in this country depends on it. I'm not going to be one of the naysayers, one of the screamers, the chicken littles. I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means. But having watched through the lens of history for the last 10 to 20 years, we have a lot of people in government office who believe they have a right to rule rather than be the public servant they were elected to be. Rome did not descend to tyranny in a day. Greece did not fall in a day. Sparta did not fall in a day. They began as very noble ventures in governance. Sparta eventually decided that they could just keep adding more and more slaves until their slaves outnumbered them by such a margin, they rose up. Rome faced the same. Greece fell to infighting. The British Empire fell to distance. You just cannot rule a global empire without a massive military force that they just could not stand, they could not maintain. The U.S. in 1776 was a new venture in governance, a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Franklin himself told us, you have a republic if you can keep it. Sadly, the people of this country ignored the warnings of the founders about a party system. The founders specifically told us, do not allow political parties to form and control the government. Vote for the individual, the person who will best serve their constituency. Yet within 100 years, we had parties. Less than 100 years after the formation of our new country, we had already faced a civil war. And we had official party action by the then Democratic Party that is not that different from today's, upset that they'd lost their slaves and working to keep their slaves downtrodden, even though they weren't slaves anymore. Fast forward from there about 100 years, and we had the Democratic Party of the 1960s filibustering for 120 hours. It's 5 full calendar days to block the Civil Rights Act, which thankfully they ultimately failed at blocking. Fast forward from there just a little over 40 years, and you have our current president, Joe Biden, who was a senator, telling the then president, George W. Bush, not to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court because he would filibuster her nomination. Until now, he nominated Ketanji Brown, who cannot define what a woman is, who gave pedophiles light sentences, and so on. You have the woman in blue in this picture. Her husband drives drunk, gets in an accident, and current rumors are that her nephew, Gavin Newsom, ordered all charges to be dropped. And now Paul Pelosi is buying chip stocks just ahead of a vote on a chip stock bailout or funding or whatever it may be from Congress. The very people who tell us insider trading is bad, who tell us tax fraud is bad, who tell us everything and anything is bad, are doing everything they tell us not to do. Insider trading is bad, but Paul Pelosi does it. They tell us that guns are horribly evil things, but they live behind the security guns provide. Walls are racist, but they all have walls around their home. And now we see poll after poll after poll telling us that more than 2/3 of Democrats will not vote for Joe Biden. Then we hear Joe Biden rant at a reporter, 92% of Democrats say they'd vote for me again if I ran. Read the polls, Jack. The polls don't say what Joe said. But I don't trust the polls. I haven't since before I could vote. And I won't. For one reason, they're not run properly. And I'll tell you how you properly run a poll. First of all, you don't do it as one person or one organization. You need differing opinions. When I was in college, during my last 3 semesters, I was tasked to poll the college student body on a few things. Now, before I could actually start working my poll, I had to show my questions to my professor and another professor. They both helped me remove any bias from the question. I then did not verbalize the question to those I polled. I simply handed them the paper, and then they would tell me their answer. A, B, C, or D. I didn't want them to tell me what their answer read out as. Just give me A, B, C, or D. I had a question. I had a form on a clipboard with the numbers for my questions and a column for A, B, C, or D. And I just made tick marks. The problem is today that that's not done. They call people and their questions are very biased. Seeing that the economy is now in a state of recovery, will you vote for Joe Biden so we can continue this? Or in 2020, seeing how racist this border wall is, how could you possibly think you could vote for Donald Trump again? Then you have your demographic sample. These polls, well, some of them, I believe, poll 10 people at the company water cooler. CNN is who I've accused of that most often. But you cannot say that a majority of Americans are going to vote Republican or Democrat without polling a large sample in every single state. Now, in a state like Delaware or Rhode Island, it's relatively easy to do that because they're very, very small. But a state like Alaska, California, New York, Texas, you have to go to all over the state. We'll use my home state of Texas as an example. In the state of Texas, you would need to go out far west to Midland, Odessa, far east to Tyler, Longview. You would need to make sure you hit Dallas-Fort Worth, Abilene and Amarillo up in the as you go northeast, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Waco. You would need to get down into the Laughlin, Del Rio, El Paso area. You'd have to drive for days on end all over this state to ensure you poll enough of a wide sample to truly see what Texans as a state think. But these pollsters don't do that. Now, granted, in today's day and age, you don't need to actually drive. You can mail, email, call, or text. But what they do is they go to, say, Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas, and they poll 1,000 people from each. And they call that, this is what Texans think. I can tell you, polling Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas is not what Texans think. It's what Texans in extremely blue cities think. Now, I'm not saying you should ignore blue cities or red cities. You need an equal number of both. You also need to have a wide range of ages, everywhere from 18 to 80 or above. You need to make sure you poll a wide range of educational backgrounds. Those who only graduated high school, those who have an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a doctorate degree, a JD, an MD. You need to make sure you poll a wide variety of occupations, from retail cashier to doctor and lawyer, teacher, and everywhere in between. Plumbers, electricians, contractors, those who may not have graduated college, but still do a very, very difficult job and a very needed job. Farmers, especially in today's world. You need to make sure you're polling men and women equally. And you need to record all of this. Now, when I was polling on the campus, I was able to see who I was polling. And my demographic age range was generally 18 to 27. So I didn't have to worry about asking their age. This is also more than 10 years ago, so I just looked at them and said male or female. I would probably be expelled for doing that today. But I still had their general information. I didn't worry about it if they were in their freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior year. They were a student at the college I was attending. When I turned in my results, I did make sure that I broke them down by gender. I broke them down by, general age range. I had two. I had those that I believed were between 18 and 23, and 24 to 27. That, I will admit, was very, very subjective because I didn't ask. I just gauged it. I was 27, 28 at the time I was doing this. But in a real poll, you would need to ask all of this. The easiest way to do this, after you have removed all bias from your question, is via postal mail or email. You have the person enter everything: name, age, address, educational background, what their general salary is, what their gender is, what party they tend to vote for, what is their occupation, what is their religious affiliation, everything. You then break down every single demographic. You literally will remove all but one demographic column, and you'll see who answered what by what column. So if you go by age, you're going to give ranges: 18 to 24, 24 to 27, 28 to 32, and so on. And you're going to break all of those out. And then you're going to do it for gender. Then you're going to do it for educational background, occupation, salary, religious background. Then you can say, based on a sample size of 1,000 people, here are the general results. But we never get that with any of these polls. What we get is 5 signs Republicans are about to crush Democrats in the midterms. I can tell you from this story, they don't give the signs. They simply say we should pick up 235 to 255 seats in the House. A total number. They don't give any of the signs. They don't give any of the polls. None of it. This is an incredibly irresponsible story to publish. It's clickbait, literally. I saw it and only clicked on it to get this image so I could make this video. We need to ignore every poll that's run. We need to ignore every single screaming news story. Republicans are about to destroy the Democrats. Democrats are set to gain supermajority. We're set to be evenly split and have nothing happen. Ignore them all. You can tell by all of my content where my politics lie. You can tell, more than likely with great ease, how I typically vote. I'm not going to tell you how to vote. I can tell you I greatly disagree with this current administration and their policy of sending billions upon billions of dollars to a country that more and more evidence is coming out of that we should not be funding as if we are their only source of income. We've currently sent them enough money to run their country for more than 2 years, with no taxes coming from their people. I disagree with everything the current administration says via any of their mouthpieces. But what I would tell you, the voter, ignore every poll, ignore every quote that I'm going to win if I run. I'm going to run and I'm going to win handily. It will be the greatest victory ever. Ignore them all. And vote as if this is the last election this country will ever see. Because if we don't do that in my lifetime, we will see the last election ever. The only question is when. Thank you all for watching. I am just very sporadically able to post right now. I'm going through a lot, but I do appreciate everyone who comes in and watches. I would greatly like to grow this channel. Make sure and tell your friends. There's a video not far before this one about a street pastor who was assaulted, his Bible destroyed, and thrown into the urine and feces of a porta potty. And the pastor was arrested, not the rioters. And the people who were part of that, the people who that pastor is associated with, they're suing the Seattle police and the city of Seattle. I would greatly respect anyone and request everyone share that video, if only just to get the story out there. I'm not going to go into everything on it. You can go watch that. But more and more every day, it's becoming apparent that the mainstream media, the old guard, is falling away. The news broadcasts are becoming op-ed programs. The op-ed programs are becoming comedy and worse. So I definitely appreciate also everyone who subscribes. Make sure you turn on notification so that you know every time I post, because there is no schedule right now. And please do leave a comment. I am here because I want to discuss, dissent, and debate, but we must do so logically and civilly as adults. I'm never going to demand you agree with me on anything or everything. I'm simply going to say that if you treat me as if you are a toddler that I have denied ice cream, I'm simply going to block you. If you treat me as an adult, someone who has a right to their own opinion, just as you do, I'll argue back and forth, dissent, discuss, debate back and forth until the cows come home. We don't have to agree. But when you start resorting to childish behavior, insulting and acting as if you are that toddler told no more candy, you prove you are of no value and have no right to my time. So far, I've only had to do that a couple of times. So please just remember, remain civil. Until next time, everyone have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and God bless.